Before we run the clip of Noam Chomsky, let's establish that he has been critical of Israel's policies, particularly regarding its occupation of Palestinian territories and its approach to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Chomsky has argued that Israel's pursuit of expansion, primarily through the establishment of settlements in the occupied territories, undermines its long-term security. Chomsky contends that Israel's expansionist policies fuel resentment and hostility among Palestinians and neighboring Arab states, thus perpetuating a cycle of violence and insecurity. He has often criticized Israel's use of military force and its violations of Palestinian human rights, viewing them as counterproductive to achieving genuine peace and security for both Israelis and Palestinians. Now off to this great clip of Chomsky speaking, and following this will be examples of Israel's expansionist policies that have been evident.
Well, I've been involved in this all my life, since the 1930s, so it's a big issue for me. But what has happened, if you take a look at what's happening with Israel and Israel in the world, it's pretty dramatic. If you go back, say, 40 years, Israel was one of the most admired countries in the world. Today, it's one of the most disliked, feared, hated countries in the world. And what's happened? What's happened was perfectly predictable. I don't say that in retrospect. I was writing about it in the early 70s. Completely predictable. Israel, after the '67 war, which you mentioned, was in a position where it could take several choices. And the choices were stark and clear. In 1971, Egypt, the major country in the region, the only military force outside of Israel, Egypt offered Israel a full peace treaty. Full peace treaty, no problems, with one condition: withdraw from Egyptian territory. Actually, they said Palestinian territory, but they meant Arab territory, but they meant Egyptian territory, the Sinai. That was considered by the Israeli cabinet. They rejected it. They wanted to expand into the Sinai. And ever since then, Israel has been facing a choice between expansion or security, and it selected expansion. That's happening right to the moment. And we're responsible in large measure for that. It's largely because of the unique, unilateral U.S. rejectionism that this continues. The U.S. is standing virtually alone, and has for years, in preventing a diplomatic settlement. It's happening right almost to the present. A lot of it is vetoes of Security Council resolutions. It's not all. The most recent one was by President Obama, who went so far as to veto a resolution calling for official U.S. policy. Official U.S. policy is there should be no settlement expansion. Actually, that's a pretty small issue. The issue is the settlements, not their expansion. But the official policy is they shouldn't expand. That was the UN resolution. Obama vetoed it. In fact, there was a much more significant case just a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago. Every 5 years, there's a review a conference of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. That's the most important arms treaty in the world. If that breaks down, we can kiss each other goodbye. It's putting some brake, not enough of a brake, but some brake on the development of means of destruction which will obliterate us very quickly. The Non-Proliferation Treaty is actually conditioned on an agreement 20 years ago that there be steps towards establishing a nuclear weapons-free zone in the Middle East. It was because of formal acceptance of that condition that the Non-Proliferation Treaty was able to be extended. Comes up every 5 years at the review conference. The U.S. blocks it. Obama just did a couple of months ago, the last meeting. And of course, it's always the same reason: to protect Israel's nuclear weapons. So this U.S. rejectionism is not only maintaining severe instability in the region, and in my view is harming Israel severely, but it's also may break down the Non-Proliferation Treaty and open the way to a further expansion of this, curse that will destroy us. It's kind of ironic in the context of all the flurry about Iranian nuclear programs. Iran is in the lead in trying to establish a nuclear weapons-free zone. They're calling for it constantly. Their foreign minister just repeated it again. He said, okay, we made this nuclear deal, now let's go on and take a real step forward. Make this one of the regions free of nuclear weapons. In fact, all weapons of mass destruction. The U.S. blocked it. And the media cooperated by barely even reporting it, practically not at all. Well, these are things that are happening all the time. We have a significant share of responsibility, all of us. We can influence policy. It'll go on like this unless we do. And for Israel, it's having exactly the consequences you described. It's becoming very right-wing, very racist, very oppressive, all predictable from the choice 40 years ago to choose expansion.
One of the most prominent examples is Israel's establishment and expansion of settlements in the occupied Palestinian territories, including the West Bank and East Jerusalem, which are considered illegal under international law. Despite condemnation from the international community, Israel has continued to build and expand settlements, thereby annexing land and altering the demographic and geographic realities on the ground. Following the Six-Day War in 1967, Israel annexed East Jerusalem, which had been under Jordanian control, in a move that has not been recognized internationally. This annexation was part of Israel's broader expansionist agenda to assert control over Jerusalem as its undivided capital, despite Palestinian claims to East Jerusalem as the capital of a future Palestinian state. In 1967, Israel occupied the Golan Heights, a strategic plateau captured from Syria during the Six-Day War. In 1981, Israel formally annexed the Golan Heights, a move that has not been recognized by the international community. Israel's continued control and settlement activity in the Golan Heights represent another aspect of its expansionist policies. Israel's construction of the security barrier, or separation wall, in the West Bank has been criticized for its route, which often extends beyond the internationally recognized borders into Palestinian territory, effectively annexing land and dividing Palestinian communities. While Israel argues that the barrier is necessary for security reasons, critics view it as a means of furthering Israeli expansion into Palestinian territory. Well, I hope you liked the video and give the channel a subscribe. Now, take care and bye-bye.